I'll make sure. Let's put our screens up. Are we going live? We're live now? Okay, great. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us at the LFA Digital 2020. Myself, Henry Woyd, and Francesco Russo are presenting to you today our exciting Mass Virtual Gallery, which we've been working hard on with our Mass team. We basically brought together two great photographers who we thought interacted really well with each other. We've got Will Scott and Stefania Miravalle, who are going to be presenting two bodies of work. The first is the architecture of the underground, and the second gallery is interactions, and that's Stefania's. Yeah, we're really excited to be here. We started this collective back in 2019. Myself, Francesco, and myself, we both set it up as a social space for architectural photographers in London. This Mass Virtual Gallery is the first gallery that we've done, and it's really exciting for us because in the current times with COVID, we've basically had to adapt and use this digital technology to put on something that we wanted to do in person, but this was the best solution that we found so far. So we're setting up 4 events for the over the month. We've got the 4th, 11th, 18th, and I believe it's the 24th of June. All the information is up on the LFA digital website and also at Mass Collective. And yeah, today we're going to let Will Scott talk to us about his documentation of the Underground, the London Underground. I'm really excited to hear the work that he's going to share with us today. So yeah, me and Francesco will turn off our video for a minute, and
before leaving space to the photographers, we want to say to all the everyone who's following us on YouTube that they can leave questions and comments on the YouTube chat, and our team will pick up some questions and we'll put them to the photographers. So yeah, there's a way for them to interact too. So exactly. Yeah. So welcome everyone, and yeah, I think it's time to leave the word to Will Scott.
That's it. Thanks, Will. Can you put up your video for us?
Yeah. Okay. Is that all working well?
It is working well, yeah.
I can't see my face, which is probably a good thing. Okay, so hello everyone. Thanks for joining us. Really excited to be presenting this work. I think first off, I'm just gonna have to say thanks to the team from Mass, so Francesco, Henry, and Luca as well, who did a load of work behind the scenes to make this happen. Obviously quite a tricky time for all photographers, not just work-wise, but personal project-wise, showing work in galleries and whatnot. So I think this is a fantastic opportunity, and I hope everyone tunes into all the other events that are going to be coming in the next few weeks. So on to my work, very imaginatively titled "The Architecture of the Underground." It's a series that I started quite a while ago now, probably late 2015, and I didn't at the time. It was a sort of accidental series, which is a bit of a theme in my work, to be honest. I wasn't really sure what I was getting into, and I was living in London. I don't live in London anymore. I live just outside, but I was living in London, and I really had no idea about the sort of periphery of the network in particular, but just mainly all the sort of incredible architecture that makes up the network. And I think that when you live in London, it's very easy to take the tube for granted, but you also probably have a bit of a love-hate, with the emphasis on hate, relationship with it. It's obviously functional, getting you to work and whatnot, and it's generally not the most pleasant place to be. So I was really surprised getting out, particularly again, as I mentioned, on the peripheral stations, and you just have these. Oh, is that my thing being moved?
Yes, sorry, I'll move that back for you. 1 second. Let me just do this.
Someone's
Sorry,
going
Will.
around.
That's all right. No worries. Let's put it back.
It's part of the game.
Yeah, exactly. It's part of the game.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, Will. Yeah, carry on. Carry on. Thank you.
Yeah, and I was just absolutely blown away, especially a lot of the modernist stations. You can see some of them here. How do you do the laser pointer again? This one here, Cockfosters,
Yeah.
is the end of the Piccadilly line, which is a kind of particularly celebrated part of the line. It was an extension to the original line, and lots of the stations were designed by a guy called Charles Holden, who was responsible for lots of the famous ones, but particularly a lot of the listed ones. So you had this incredible modernist piece of architecture in a fairly sort of otherwise dull suburb full of commuters, and it must have been quite incredible seeing the building in the 30s in that context. And then, I mean, I'm not sure where our guests are joining us from. If you are living in London, you're probably familiar with some of the stations here. But it was the other thing that struck me was the emphasis on the design didn't just stop at the station architecture. Another very prominent person in the sort of development of the network is a guy called Frank Pick, and he was incredibly interested and passionate about using design to sort of not only promote the network, but build something that had value, value beyond the functional aspect of it. So he commissioned the guy that did the tube map, which is kind of set the standard for rail and tube maps around the world. The typology, the famous roundel, which is the red and white sign with the station name in blue in the middle. That was another sort of really iconic piece of design. So you had all these things coming together, and it's just really seems ahead of its time. And I think in the current climate in the UK, it's kind of quite hard to imagine something like this, especially on this scale. And again, especially thinking with the London context being built. So yeah, so in this room, obviously, we've got the interiors. And although I haven't, the series is ongoing, I haven't catalogued all the stations yet, which isn't really the goal. I'm just going to try and get a sort of as deep a cross section of the different styles and types as I can. But this room kind of contrasts a couple of the modern stations from the late 90s where they did the Jubilee line extension. So on my right-hand side, you've got Canada Water here. And then on my left, back left, is Westminster. And the other one to the right there is Oakwood, which is the end of that Piccadilly line strut. And then this one here to my right, directly to my right, is Gants Hill, which is quite sort of a hidden gem. It's right out on the central line, at zone 4 or 5 or something, and it was inspired by what Charles Holden and Frank Pick did was they traveled around the world to see other stations and other sort of civic buildings that they could take inspiration from, and this was inspired by the Moscow Metro. So if you ever see pictures of the Moscow Metro, there's a lot of similarities there. But again, the setting, this one is pretty unremarkable from surface level. It doesn't really have a station as such. There's just a couple of signs, and then you come underground in this fairly sort of dull part of London, and you're met with that. It's quite amazing. So I would recommend everyone, when times are back to normal, obviously, take a trip along to some of these stations. It really is a really interesting way of spending a few hours. And then perhaps we should shift into the other room because we've got some exterior images to show here. Where can I stand? It's not. Is that good? And not too in the way
Yeah,
there. Yeah.
I think that looks good. Well, yeah, you're not
Yeah.
blocking any photos too much. So.
Yeah. We've got hello there. Hi, come on in. So again, I've tried to go for a bit of a cross section here. We've got, if we start directly behind me, Arnos Grove, which is probably the most famous one by Charles Holden. And actually, the architecture critic for The Guardian, Jonathan Clancy, listed this as one of his 12 great modern buildings alongside things like the Sydney Opera House and the Guggenheim. So it's held in pretty high regard, and it's amazing going in there. One of the frustrations on my part was that you see a lot of the sort of street furniture and the signage and stuff, and it's annoying because when he was alive, Frank Pick was apparently very meticulous about traveling around all the stations and getting really cross if he saw any sort of bins or anything in the way. He'd get them taken care of. Obviously, these days that isn't possible, but it's quite annoying from a photographer's perspective. Then got another very famous Holden one here, Collier's Wood, which is, if you're from London, you probably recognise the kind of the look. There's a lot of stations like this built, particularly in the south, which were quite revolutionary for their time. We've got a modern one here, Southwark, is again part of the Jubilee line extension, and a pretty amazing contrast. And then a couple of older ones down here, the end of the room, Hounslow West, which is beautiful Art Deco one, and again is in. You just do not expect a building like that in a sort of part of town like that. And then Barron's Court, which is the oldest one here, by the architect Leslie Green, and there's a particularly beautiful interior there. But yeah, so that's the project. It's still ongoing, but kind of very slowly get distracted by other things, and I am hoping to finish it at some point. So hopefully this can give me a bit of a boost to kind of get that done. I think that is me about done.
Thank you very much for sharing. That's really, really great.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, so that was really interesting. And now we're going to be moving on to Stefania Miravalle's work. So we're going to take you through to the next room. Yeah, we'll show you guys through that. So, Will, you can turn off your video now and we'll share with Stefania.
Thank God.
Hi,
Okay.
Stefania.
Anyone else come in?
Yep, everyone come through.
Hello.
Hi, Stefania. Can you hear us? Stefania? Hello.
You're muted, Stefania.
Hi, sorry. I was still in mute. I'm really sorry.
That's okay.
Do you hear me
No
well
problem.
now?
We can.
Yeah,
Are you going to share your video or are
Still
we just going
learning how to manage the virtual reality.
to... Okay. Not a
Okay. Hi,
all good.
everyone. Thank you for coming. Do you hear me now?
We can
Do
hear
you
you
hear
perfectly.
me?
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you
Okay, great. Great beginning.
perfectly.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming. And I am Stefania Miravalle, as now you know, and I am presenting a project that is titled Interaction. This project revolves around one of the most fundamental architectural questions, which is the interrelation between the building and its context. Being a photographer, I looked at the effects of this interaction from a visual perspective, considering the figurative value of architecture. I started thinking on the project on a sunny day when I was walking around Canary Wharf, and the quirky effects that the building had on one another drew my attention. There I started considering the factual implication of another significant architectural concern, that is the choice of material used for the facade of the building. And I realized how powerful the choice of a glassy surface can be in terms of integration and interrelation of the building and the area. I won't pretend to be the first one who pays attention to this detail, but I will try to make clearer the reason why I was attracted by this theme. I think that it is important to consider the fact that I come from a historical city. Just to make you understand, its urban development started during the Roman era, but its urbanization had a setback during the 20th century. It's not common to see glassy facades in my city, and almost impossible to see what can happen when two transparent and reflective facades face one another. The interaction between the buildings in Turin are limited by the use of dull materials to a visual juxtaposition and a casual projection of shadows from a building onto one other structure nearby. Probably for this reason, I found it so appealing on that day. What I saw in Canary Wharf was much more meaningful and deeper than what I was just seeing. Just like most people, I've always been attracted by reflections. This because I was interested in the transformation that the features on the reflecting surface impose to its image of the real object, and how this can add value in terms of meaning to its image. We can, for example, consider the effects of movement in the case of a reflection on water, or any psychological or symbolic connotation that can be given to a collage of elements reflected out of the context. During my wanderings, I grasped how powerful all this can be in the city, and started focusing on the event from the perspective of a pedestrian who, walking around and looking at the architecture, maybe because of a lack of authorization or a lack of time, can just perceive visually the exteriors of the building as tri-dimensional images and bidimensional reflections. So I started looking at the reflection, not just in terms of passive impression the feature of the building had on each other's surface, but as an active process that happens on the surface space where the image of the reflected design combines with the shape of the reflecting surface, with external elements of the reflective structure, and with markers left by the activity in the building. All this is then slightly transformed, for example, distorted, colorized, and textured in the process because of the technical specification of the glass. After that, the resulting image is projected onto the surroundings as if it were in a screen, giving passersby the chance to look at it from a different perspective and in a way that wouldn't have been possible if the architects had selected another material for the facade. But yeah, let's start to see some evidence of this. If you can please look on your, on my left, that is, you can see the first picture that I want to show you here, that one. That it is the one that I have selected. It's the one that I have selected for the cover of the exhibition. But the reason for choosing it is not because it is my favorite, but because the extension of significance is more evident here than elsewhere. As you can see, this is a picture of the South Kensington branch of the Imperial College. And here, contemporary architecture takes advantage of the properties of glass to take possession of the culturally and historically dissimilar surroundings. And we are talking about a real possession, because the image of the building opposite looks like it was embedded in the glass panels to such an extent that after being dissected and colorized by the panels, appears to become the texture of the subjects, sorry, my English. And if you can just look at the other picture that is now on behind your shoulder. Sorry, I have some problems in managing my avatar, really. Old-fashioned girl. And so if you can look at the other picture, oh my God, I can't move. Yeah, good. Really, old-fashioned girl, yeah.
It's okay.
I'm not so old, but yeah, I am old-fashioned. Okay, let's move. Sorry. Okay, this one. This one. Okay, here you can see one of my favorite architecture in London. That is doing too many things together. That is the Trinity Laban Center in Greenwich. The building was designed by the Swiss architectural duo of Herzog and de Meuron in collaboration with the artist Michael Cray Martin, who was involved in the project for his approach to color. What I find so appealing of this building are indeed the use that it makes of the color and its integrative approach. I have caught it through various elements, starting with the choice of a translucent material, which create a kind of mediated interrelation, letting us perceiving the internal structures and the action that can take place in the room, but not allowing us to see them clearly. But I love its, let's say, integrative shape, which on one side embraces the garden opposite, while on the other side, the facade that I have photographed, which is with its mirroring windows, assimilates and reflects the images of the surrounding residential building. And in conclusion, the color palette matching between the Laban Center and the opposite building is so balanced that it is difficult to interpret this in a casual way. In this picture, I tried to secure the original impression that I had on that day. The one of a building designed to adapt to and display its surroundings. The first idea that I got when I saw this scene, maybe it can sound strange and inappropriate, but it was of an internal wall where some architectural images were hung. Okay, now we need to go to the second room, and this can be a tough task for me, but I will try to arrive before you. Okay. Here we are. For this room, I have selected pictures regarding the Harbor Exchange Square area, because this gives us the opportunity to see the effects of those exchanging or reflections that I mentioned before, happening in this case between the One Park Drive, the Baltimore Tower, and part of the Exchange Tower. Here, maybe I try to join you to get more in the middle. Oh, okay. Here, I developed in a more evident way the idea that the opposite building is a screen that receives the image, processes it, and plays and displays it to passersby. I have tried to work on the combination of structural features of the reflecting building and image reflected, and once more on the event of texturing a reflection with elements belonging to the reflecting structure. In this case, I switch on light. You can see the picture is the picture that is the second picture in the bottom at the bottom of the room on my right. I am talking about this. In my project, I have always been searching for a type of intimate exchange resulting from the mirroring of two architectural subjects in order not to deter focus from my search, with too many different elements. But this picture, this one that I have on the left, is an exception. And I shot it because I was fascinated by the way in which the two different volumes of the two towers could adapt to the shape and flatness of this once more bidimensional reflection to create something new. Sincerely, I really like the way in which the reflecting facades crop the shape of the tallest building, creating really something that is more meaningful and make us reflecting about, what's the effect in terms of meaning again of these interactions. Okay, I think that I have talked enough, and I hope that I have not been too much long-winded. I usually talk a lot, and thank you for listening to me, and thank you for coming again. And thank you.
Thanks, Stefania. That's really kind. It's really interesting to listen about the project and some amazing photography from both yourself and Will. I suppose I'd like to take this moment to thank the LFA Digital 2020 team, Rosa Regina, Maxine Somner, and Elisa Grosvenor for helping us arrange this great event. We'd also like to say that we're supporting our artists on Mass Collective through our fine art prints, where you'll actually be able to purchase some of these works and see them in real life yourself. It's a really important thing to do, and the artists appreciate any support that you might be able to give them. So we have our links at the gallery doors. So there's the print shop where you can click the link there, and also below the images that are for sale, there's also links to them, which will take you through to the Mass website. And I'd just like to say thanks to everyone and coming and listening to the artists, and thank you to Will, thank you to Stefania. And they'll be here, and we're going to sort of chat with everyone and definitely welcome more people into the room. So if you're listening on YouTube, I think we've actually got one or two questions.
Yeah, should we see if the public that joined us here has some questions or wants to? So we have quite a few people in the room. I don't know if the camera can pick up everyone, but there's a small crowd here. I don't know if you guys managed to activate your mic and if you want to ask anything either to the photographers or to Mass Collective team.
Yeah, we're happy to answer any questions. You can use the chat either way. I could kick us off with one from the YouTube if you like. Yeah. So Taran's asking Will. Will, did you have permission from the TfL to photograph the tube stations, or how did you go about arranging your shoots? And was it difficult to sort of get permission and access to the stations?
So I got permission and I got a permit. I had to get a permit, which allowed me to use my tripod, but it was still fairly restricted, and it was quite tricky, sort of putting it down, and you couldn't just drop it down anywhere you wanted. Obviously, it's it was in use, and that granted me a few hours access, but it also meant every time I had to basically ask the station master for permission to use the tripod. Luckily, they were all really nice, and everyone was quite keen to try and help me out. But yeah, that was, you have to get permission for any sort
Okay.
of photography, especially with a like professional looking camera. You literally whip it
Absolutely.
out, and you get told straight away, you're not allowed to do that. So they do offer
Yeah.
a permit you can apply for, which is, it's gone up a lot in price, which is part of the reason why the project's kind of slowed down a little bit. But yeah.
Okay, fair enough. That makes sense. And it's quite an important part of the process, isn't it, of taking a decent architectural shot, a solid tripod is what's going to help you
Yeah,
out
I
there.
think
So.
yeah, exactly. What the kind of photography that a lot of us in mass do is really based on quite a slow way of working. You normally always are using a tripod and shift lenses, so it's very difficult to shoot handheld with a shift lens, especially if you're wanting to. So that, yeah, the kind of the logistics approach is always informed by that.
Yeah.
I think Karen was trying to get in, and he was having some difficulties.
Yes, I heard that. I hopefully I'll deal with that and let Francesco ask some more questions, or if anyone has any more questions, that'd be great.
Sorry, say again.
Francesco, do you want to? I'm going to let help Taran to get into the room. One thing I need to quickly say was I wanted to thank Zoomed In as well for streaming us via the YouTube live stream, and also to everyone that's tuned in there. It's been really nice to sort of share the work with you. And I believe that we might be opening up the gallery later at around 7 p.m. the virtual gallery to the general public. So if you stick around, there's going to be a link for you there. And that will be really handy. So yeah, so thanks again to Luca Donovan for doing the work for Zoomed In. Cheers. All right, so yeah, enjoy, and I think we're gonna have a look around now, and if we have any more questions come through, we can always ask and speak with the crowd. Stefania, is there any other sort of final points you'd like to make about your projects? Like, how was it with the creating of the process? Oh, we've got another question coming through in a second as well. Was it a similar process to Will? Are you shooting on a tripod? Is it a set down thing, or are you being a bit more, sort of on the fly, run and gun, sort of shooting without a tripod?
Yeah, as you see from the picture that I have on the left, the first picture was taken without a tripod because it was on the fly. I just looked at the building. I saw it, this idea of the screen of the projection, and I started to take some shots on the fly. But after that, when I really deepened the topic, I worked on the tripod and planning all the shots, like with the Laban Center and other shots. They were more planned, obviously. But yeah, the first approach was very instinctual. I saw the scene, I thought about what's the meaning of it, and just took on the fly the first shot, and in the flow of the emotion of the day.
Okay.
On the flow.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
And we have a question actually here from James Newton. He's got a question for you, Stefania. He's asking, how important is scale in the presentation of your images? And I suppose that comes back into relation of this virtual gallery and something that we were trying to achieve. But yeah, what do you think about that?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and I have not considered it sincerely, but yeah, I think that in this case, of this project, it depends on the project, obviously, but in this case, I think that scale is quite important because obviously we are talking about images of huge buildings, so they have to be balanced with the subject they are representing. So yeah, that one.
Okay, that's great. And Will, how about yourself? How important is scale in the presentation of your images? Because I know some of the interior underground shots as well. They do have this sort of epic scale. I don't know where Will's gone, but I will find him.
Right behind you. Yeah, exactly.
It's a bit confusing.
Yeah, I think
with Stefania's photo. Yeah, go on.
Scale is always very key, especially with printed work. But I think the one good thing about the virtual gallery, is that you do get the scale a lot more than browsing on a website or on Instagram, don't you? So it's kind of like a
Yeah.
nice middle. Yeah, I'm kind of, the thing with the Underground series is obviously there's a lot of pictures, there's a lot of stations, so there's quite a lot of pictures. So it's kind of trying to find the balance between having the bigger scale and then have, you know, you'd have to have a pretty massive space to have loads of huge pictures, because you kind of need the numbers as well. So then you can pick up on the differences and you know, pick up common threads between the stations and whatnot.
Yeah, no, I think that's an important point for sure. Yeah, great. Okay, I don't know if we have any. I think we're inviting some people in now from YouTube, which would be great. So there'll be more people coming into the gallery, and hopefully they'll have some questions, and yeah, we can talk to you.
There's the link in the. I just yeah, sorry, I'm jumping in, but I'm running a bit of the background of the things, and I've just posted in the YouTube chat a link that if someone wants to join the gallery now, they'll be able to do it. So feel free to join.
We should also mention that some of the images that are for sale, they have a little shopping trolley underneath them.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, we said that.
Yeah.
If you click in there,
let's show them some. Come on then. Where's one? Here we go. Here's Stefania's work, one of her pieces. If I put the pointer up, you can see. So as you can see here, there's the little icon here for the basket, and if you click it, it'll take you through to the website. Tells you all about the photographer's work, a description of the project, the sizes that we're selling the images at, because it'd be really amazing to obviously see these works in person. And we're running this limited edition print sale for all of the photographers that are involved in the four events this over June. So yeah, you'd be lucky if you find one of these, and if you get a first edition, even better. So I'd really encourage people to check out the print shop, and yeah, we'll appreciate all your purchases. Thanks very much. Okay, great. Let's have a look through here. We've got another question coming through. Okay, we've got Will. Where's Will and Stefania? There we go.
Will,
I see
come over,
Stefania.
please. Yeah, there's another. Yeah, sorry. I was just going to the entrance to see if someone was coming in. Yeah, there's a question from
sorry, the connection is not good.
Oh, sorry.
Can you please repeat? Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a question from Taran.
Okay.
Again, hi Taran. In the YouTube chat, he's asking if you guys both intend to replicate the exhibition in an actual physical gallery or something similar in real life, let's say, after the lockdown is over.
I would really appreciate. Yeah, maybe we are thinking about it. We will consider it.
What about you, Will?
yeah, possibly, but I think it's probably a bit. The series is probably only a third done, so it's a long while off just yet. And I also have a bit of a habit of starting projects before I finish the previous one, which doesn't help. I'd love to show it in some form.
I think that if you say that you'll do it after the Elizabeth line opens, you're pretty safe. That is not going to happen soon.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, I'd love to show it. Maybe a book or something might be good, but yeah, who knows.
All right.
Well, if anyone in the room has any other questions, we'll take them. Or if you want to chat to Will or you want to chat to Stefania, they're right here. So definitely use that YouTube link and come and visit the gallery. All the controls, when you enter, you'll be linked to the MAST website, and that will give you the controls to operate yourself around the room. Pretty straightforward with your mouse and your W, A, S, and D. And yeah, come check out some of the work for yourself. I mean, it's right here, and it's it's just
and this setup will be on for the next week. So anytime for the following 7 days will be accessible to the public. We'll provide a link through our social media in the YouTube description. And but next week there's another exhibition coming up, so there's going to be a new setup. So stay tuned.
Yeah, and I think next week we've got Urban Identities, and that's by one of our founders, Francesco. He's just been speaking with us. He and Polly Tutal, really exciting project where they're collaborating on their urban identities, and they have their own separate project, Ruin or Rust, and also Somewhere in England. And yeah, it's all going to be a sort of exploration about urban identity, and I think it's going to be a really interesting talk and worth coming to. So if you want to find tickets to that, they're going to be on the LFA website. They're also on Mass Collective. You can find them on our Instagram links there. So and that's mass.collective. Yeah, and yeah, come along and we'll be happy to show you around. Yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, so okay, that's great. Let's have a look. Well, I'd love to come chat to you about yours. Yeah, it's over. Live stream's over.
Yeah, I was going to go back to
Yeah, let's come through, man. Make it a bit more casual.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I believe that the live stream is now over, so it's people just coming in and listening to the work.
Yeah. Good.